I'd like to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg. Democrats are not going to win if we have a nominee who has a history of hiding his tax returns, of harassing women, and of supporting racist policies like redlining and stop and frisk. Look, I'll support whoever the Democratic nominee is, but understand this. Democrats take a huge risk if we just substitute one arrogant billionaire for another. This country has worked for the rich for a long time and left everyone else in the dirt. It is time to have a president who will be on the side of working families and be willing to get out there and fight for them. That is why I am in this race, and that is how I will beat Donald Trump.
Senator Warren, you've been critical of Mayor Bloomberg on this issue.
Yes, I have, and I hope you heard what his defense was. I've been nice to some women. That just doesn't cut it. The mayor has to stand on his record, and what we need to know is exactly what's lurking out there. He has gotten some number of women, dozens, who knows, to sign non-disclosure agreements, both for sexual harassment and for gender discrimination in the workplace. So, Mr. Mayor, are you willing to release all of those women from those non-disclosure agreements so we can hear their side of the story?
We have a very few non-disclosure agreements.
How many is that?
Let me finish.
How many is that?
None of them accuse me of doing anything other than maybe they didn't like the joke I told. And let me just put, there's agreements between two parties that wanted to keep it quiet, and that's up to them. They signed those agreements, and we'll live with it.
So wait, when you say it is up to, I just want to be clear. Some is how many? And when you say they signed them and they wanted them, if they wish now to speak out and tell their side of the story about what it is they allege, that's now okay with you? You're releasing them on television tonight?
Senator? No.
Is that right?
Senator,
tonight?
Senator, the company and somebody else, in this case, a man or a woman, or could be more than that, they decided when they made an agreement that they wanted to keep it quiet for everybody's interest. They signed the agreements, and that's what we're going to live with.
I'm sorry. No, the question is, are the women bound by being muzzled by you? And you could release them from that immediately, because understand, this is not just a question of the mayor's character. This is also a question about electability. We are not going to beat Donald Trump with a man who has who knows how many non-disclosure agreements and the drip, drip, drip of stories of women saying they have been harassed and discriminated against.
Here's the thing. When you are the 9th richest person in the world who's just dumped $500 million into putting yourself on every television set in America and hoping to skate by without scrutiny, you'd better expect a fight from Elizabeth Warren, whose campaign is literally predicated on ending abuse by unaccountable billionaires. And yet that Bloomberg didn't was made painfully obvious. Now look, I'm not here to attack Democrats, and like Senator Warren said, I will gleefully vote for whoever the Democratic nominee is. It could be a patch of dirt and I will be out there phone banking for it. But while we're in the process of choosing our nominee, it's important to risk the temptation of sacrificing our values for what TV ads or a media narrative is telling you is electable. Because what's electable is a candidate that isn't afraid to fight for those values. A candidate who will fight for a stronger middle class and not pander to billionaires and corporations. A candidate who will fight to protect the environment and not the profits of fossil fuel companies. A candidate who will fight to ensure that Americans have access to quality healthcare and not entrench a system where an insurance company's CEOs get rich on the backs of the sick. A candidate who treats people of every race, gender, sexual orientation, and social class with dignity and respect. And by no means am I talking about one specific candidate, because we're lucky enough that so many Democrats running for president embrace those values. values. But when we begin to sacrifice those values because we're being convinced that the only way to take on Trump is with someone who shares a lot of the same baggage, is when we find ourselves in trouble. And that isn't to say that Bloomberg is the left's version of Trump, because I don't believe that to be true. But I do think that the moment we find ourselves in demands something different from a Democratic candidate for president. It demands someone willing, for once, to fight for regular people. Because after 3 years of an administration that has exploded the deficit, also that corporations and the super rich could hoard more money, at a time when income inequality is already at unimaginable levels, we shouldn't be left guessing whether our nominee on the left is going to fight for regular people. And I don't think it's a stretch to question that from the world's 9th richest person. And look, while it may seem like this primary is ugly, that's the point. It's to air everyone's dirty laundry before the general election so that there aren't any surprises that could cripple our candidate when we've nominated someone to go up against Trump. The fact is that we can't have someone who's vulnerable. And so, as brutal as it may seem, Elizabeth Warren was absolutely right to hold Bloomberg's feet to the fire over the NDAs that he's had female employees sign, over his tax returns, over stop and frisk, over redlining. And if he's able to overcome that and become the nominee, like I said, I will support him, and I hope that the party does too. But if moments like what happened in this debate were to sink Bloomberg's candidacy, then all I can say is better now than in November. And ultimately, we have to hope that the system will work. That even if a candidate unilaterally richer than most countries on the face of the earth seeks to make himself ubiquitous on every TV screen in the country, that we have debates like these to level the playing field. Because let's face it, all the money in the world still won't be able to stop people like Elizabeth Warren from having moments like these where she drops the mic on the debate stage.